Hi, my name is Matt Knaus, and today I'll talk about how to conduct a research interview in a design process. I will talk mainly about location, equipment, roles, and dramaturgy. So, you did your primary research, you got all your clever questions, recruited extreme as well as average candidates for what you want to research about. So, the next question would be where? Well, in theory, a research interview can take place anywhere, a cafe, a park, your office. But there are certain advantages of what's called a contextual interview. Interviewing people in their home, at their workplace, where they spend their free time, reveals behaviors that they do unconsciously, and they will be much more likely to stay in the role they're usually in. So, this enables you to not only hear what they say they do, but to see actually do it. So if you're asking somebody if there's a problem, let's say with handling a drug packaging, they might say no. If you can ask them to actually show you how they handle it as well, it can reveal something very different. So one old lady, for example, might reveal that she uses a meat slicer to flex the top of a cap. Problem solved, which is a real world example, by the way. And last but not least, memory depends on context. So visiting a school ground you went to as a child, for example, will bring back memories you otherwise would have forgotten. But let's talk about equipment now. When taking notes, stay as analog as possible. Laptops can be a distraction or even an irritation. Only think about the constant clattering of a keyboard. Smartphones can only be used on complete mute and for specific purposes like taking pictures or audio recording, and never as a personal device. So bring your paper notebooks and pens. Documentation is a very important part of any research interview. So always try to audio record the interview, but only with written consent. Video is especially beneficial if you conduct the interview alone or if you want to analyze how somebody is handling an object, for example. For audio recording, you can use a smartphone, but it should be placed screen facing down on the table. There are recording apps with an auto transcription function, which are very useful, even if the transcription is not perfect. But you can always come back later in the process and search for a keyword or a specific quote you would like to extract. You can find the link of the one I'm using in the video description. If you want to record video, of course, bring your camera and a tripod. Don't bring your top-notch SLR camera with all the pro accessories. It's easier for the interviewee to forget the recording aspect if the devices are discreet, and try to keep them out of the direct line of sight. And of course also know your tech. Be prepared. It would be very annoying if your recorder runs out of battery or doesn't record properly. So let's talk about roles. The first question is, how many people should be in your team? Well, this depends on the location and the number of people you interview. I'd suggest at least 2 people and a maximum of 3. Each has a specific role, and these are the roles. First, the interviewer, of course. As the interviewer, you're the master of ceremony. But don't forget, your interviewee is the star. You only steer the direction of the conversation. The most important skill a good interviewer should master is active listening. Stay present and dedicate your full attention to your opposite. Be curious but never judgmental. Ask open-ended questions like when, what, and especially why and how. Also ask often about feelings. How did this make you feel? If you want to know more about active listening, and you should, there's a link in the description to a good article of Lori Luca from the UX Collective. Be patient and give the interview time to answer. Don't fill silences, they often reveal very valuable information. And don't interrupt. Try to find a balance between sticking to your prepared questions and exploring different routes as they surface during the conversation. The more exploratory your research is, the less structured the interview can be. But as you're watching this video, you might not be a pro yet, so I would advise to start structured and gradually work yourself towards more flexibility in your questions. Structured interviews are also better controllable and are easier to analyze. Especially as an interview beginner, don't take notes. Focus on active listening, asking the right questions, and with experience, you will know when to note down a keyword to cycle back to later in the interview. The second role is the one of the documentator, and it is an important one. You're taking notes with a special focus on problems, observations, needs, and quotes. Otherwise, you're responsible for digital recording and documenting. This involves taking pictures of the interview, the surroundings, anything that could be of interest, all again with the consent of the candidate and without intruding too much into the candidate's privacy. Use your common sense and think what you would be comfortable with. Even if you record the interview digitally, it is invaluable to have an immediate access to a condensed summary and specific quotes directly after the interview. As useful as a recording and transcription might be, you usually won't have the time to go through all your interviews in real time again. These two roles, interviewer and documentator, I would consider a must. If possible, I would advise a third role, especially when video recording is not possible, but would be beneficial, the observer. The observer solely focuses on nonverbal communication like body language, facial expression, gestures, and voice. So these were the roles now. Let's talk about dramaturgy. As the interviewer, start with an introduction of yourself and the team. Then begin the interview with wide open questions. Let the participant get familiar with the situation. Almost everybody likes to talk about themselves, especially when several people seem to be really interested in what you have to say. I mean, how often does this happen in your daily life? It is also quite revealing what people choose to tell when you ask them broad questions. After such a broad start, you should step by step narrow down on the topic and get deeper. Later, you can mix in activities with props, cards, pen and paper, or whatever you prepare. When all the prepared questions have been answered, it's time for a wrap-up where the interviewer can circle back to statements and ask for clarification. Last but not least, there are many ethical considerations surrounding a research interview. But this would be a video of its own. If you want to be better prepared in this area, I recommend reading the book, The Little Book of Design Research Ethics, freely available from IDEO. I put the link in the description as well. In general, a consent form is a must. It must include the specific consent to digitally record the interview with audio, photo or video. Always explain why you need to record it and what you'll do with any recordings and pictures once they have been analyzed. You can easily find a good template covering all you need to cover in your country online. Just Google it. Many universities offer one for download. There'd be so much more to talk about, but HyperAnt limits my time to 8 minutes 50 seconds. So thank you for watching, good luck with your interview, and goodbye.